I think you're good to go.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our panel on campus organizing and student leadership. We have two fantastic guests today, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and the first one is going to be Ramis. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Ramis.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Ramis Radoud. I'm a senior at Columbia University. I'm studying anthropology and political science. And I am a university senator for Columbia University, which is a university-wide position that works on policy with faculty administrators, and it's enacted university-wide. I work on specifically issues of mental health and diversity. In addition to that, I'm involved on the Muslim Students Association on campus and various other different activist movements.
Okay, thank you, Ramis. Hanan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Good evening, everyone. I'm Hanan Yahya. I attend the University of Michigan, and I'm studying social theory and practice, concentrating on urban studies. I also have minors in community action and social change, as well as entrepreneurship. I'm originally from Detroit, so I was raised there, and I'm very passionate about social entrepreneurship and social innovation and community organizing.
Okay, thank you. So how this is going to work is I'm going to direct some questions at you guys and just let whoever wants to take the reins. But first, I want to ask you guys about your specific experience and what you just introduced to us. So, Ramis, could you elaborate a little more on your role as the university senator and what struggles might exist with that?
Sure. So a little bit of background on the University Senate. It's unlike most student councils at universities because it's a university-wide. So Columbia has about 20 different schools. There's the undergraduate college, the engineering school, business school, law school, etc. So the University Senate brings together all of these schools, their students, their faculty, their administrators, librarians, researchers, staff, the president of the university trustees, and they work together to form university policy. So I represent the undergraduate college on the University Senate, and we work towards policies that affect at least 2 schools or at least 2 administrative branches. So it's pretty large structural policy. This is a part of a larger historic push for more student involvement in administrative practices and policymaking. So there's always a struggle in terms of balancing student interests with faculty and administrative interests, negotiating with those constituencies, and really keeping all 3 constituencies in mind in forming policy. So, for example, if we're pushing for an academic policy that would be really beneficial for students, it may actually be detrimental to faculty and how they teach their classes. So it's always something to keep in mind, that there is more than one constituency at a university, and there's a lot of politics and interest making and compromise that you have to go through and keep in mind if you want to be in a policymaking position on a university level.
Okay. I'm going to jump around and come back to you, but Hanan, can you tell us a little bit about your degrees and what you're studying and how that relates to rallying students on campus and maybe what you've learned at school you've tied back to actual action and community organizing and student organizing?
Sure thing. So, like I said, my major is called social theory and practice, and I'm concentrating on urban studies. So once you hear the name, you kind of like, kind of question it, like, well, what is this about? How is it different than, the other majors like sociology and other types of fields that are very broad. But social theory and practice is a self-designed major through one of the programs on campus, and the goal is that you get an interdisciplinary experience over the 4 years by taking classes in sociology, political science, economics, and things like that. And so you really get a well-rounded understanding of what it means to be a social theorist, to study social theory, but also, more importantly, in my opinion, the practical element of it, which is the practice. Really going out into communities and studying them and learning more about them and getting involved in, and even creating your own kind of ideas and implementing them in those communities. And so with this major, I've been able to develop that kind of understanding, that holistic approach to community organizing and understanding communities and social behavior, and also applying what I've learned. So creating organizations on campus and movements and I mean, currently I'm working on 2 apps, one on campus and one in Southwest Detroit, where I grew up. And they both kind of attempt to do the same thing. You know, solve issues that are taking place in those communities, bring people together, keep people connected, and essentially, you know, rally for something that's very important to me. And so basically that's it.
Okay, great. Yeah, it sounds like you guys have a lot of different experience working on universities and in your educational experience. So I'm going to jump right into questions, the nitty-gritty, like what students want to know and how you guys can help them. So I think the first question would be, how do you get people to join a student movement? How do you get people to join a cause on university? What are the things you guys struggle with? So whoever wants to start with that can go ahead. Ramos, you can go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Ramis, go.
Sure. Okay. So that really, in terms of community organizing, especially on the campus level, the hardest part is getting people involved, because you're on a campus. The fundamental reason people are there is for academics, is to get a degree from this university. So they're obviously going to be very much involved and with their academic pursuits. The time can be consumed by studying and taking tests and going to class. So getting people to join a movement or to be really involved in a movement is very tough. First things first, the quickest way to get someone to attend an event or join a movement is food, free food especially. On a college campus, free food is very, very good social currency to employ whenever you have the chance. So if you're a student group who has money to program events, definitely use some of that money on food. But really, on a more base level, it really is interest. So it's a lot about advertising your movement, and some of these movements, these initiatives, obviously have to be. They can't just be advertised by putting up posters and posts on Facebook events. It really is building a network and reaching out to people you know who may know someone who may be interested. But it really is a lot of advertising, getting the word out about your movement, and drawing the people in who are truly, truly interested in the actual initiative, and people who will dedicate their time because they may have had a personal experience, or they may have had a friend who has a personal experience, or they're just interested in the topic. So, for example, like I mentioned before, I'm involved with reforming our mental health policy on campus. So that involves making sure that students have the right resources to deal with mental health issues, making sure that our counseling and psychological services are fully resourced and staffed and funded, and making sure that students know that these resources are available, fighting the stigma that mental health has on campus. And we have a pretty good working group of 15 to 20 consistent members, and those are people who have had personal experiences with mental health issues, who have taken a leave of absence from school because of mental health issues, people who are interested in going into medicine and psychiatry, and just people who are interested in reforming the services that a university provides to its students. So it's a group of seriously interested students that really, really want to make a change. So really, it is getting down to the students that are interested.
That's great. Hanan, would you like to speak to this at all?
Yes, actually. So just to piggyback off of Ramis's point, definitely incentives and definitely free food. That's probably the best thing that you can do in terms of event planning and getting people to show up in the first place, is to provide incentives. Whether it's working in the community or on campus, things like free raffle, gift cards, or and food, obviously, and other things that will really just bring them there, not essentially kind of connected to the event itself. I would say that in terms of when you market a movement or something that you're working on, you need to make sure that the audience that you're reaching, the people that you're trying to reach out to reflects your goal kind of in terms of the diversity. So, for example, if you're trying to reach the entire campus through a movement, you know, and bring people of all colors and backgrounds together, then you need to make sure that the people that are on the team themselves and the movement itself and the story that you're trying to tell or the movement that you're trying to get people on it reflects that same diversity, so people can relate, so people can reflect. That's something very huge. I feel like some orgs and groups often overlook. So making sure that there are people on the team that are diverse and bring different perspectives, so that the entire campus or the group or the audience that you're targeting will also connect to and show up to. Something else, I would say allies. Building allies and building connections on campus with other student orgs. I know on campus we had a lot of movements happening, taking place in the past couple of years, and the most instrumental thing about those is that they connected with other orgs on campus and other people. And so it wasn't just one group trying to do their own thing. They connected with others so they can connect to their kind of people, their networks. So that not only brings more people, but it also shows that there are different groups that are coming together to work on it. So definitely building allies. So allowing people, pushing people to show up is one thing, and keeping them is another. And so I feel like one of the most important things in keeping people, you know, connected and showing up to future events is holding like informal talks about things that you could do better, you know, as a group, kind of like feedback sessions, you know, whether that's through surveys or through actual talks. That's a good idea. Showing them that their voice matters in what the movement is doing, and allowing them the space to voice that and to get on board with it in any way. I think I have one more thing, and that's in terms of when you're working with social media. That's huge. You know, keeping an email list that will stay in touch with everyone, a social media page, something that keeps them, you know, connected and keep them on board. I mean, when you see these political campaigns, you see things in your face all the time, Facebooking, and sometimes it gets annoying. You don't want to push it, but there are ways where you can, you know, keep a balance between that and just making sure that they stay connected and that they're on board. You know, it's like just that human connection. You got to keep it there, whether it's informal, formal, or in person or not, and that's my kind of my 2 cents.
Great. Well, it seems like you guys have thought a lot about trying to get people to join your movements, and I'm just curious, is there another aspect of having a campus movement or having a movement in general that you guys think is particularly difficult or you struggle with a lot, and if you guys could speak to that a little bit? Ramis, you can go ahead.
Sure. I can speak to the more controversial campus movements. Because I've been involved with a few on campus here at Columbia. So for those of you watching, you may or may not have heard about the huge push for sexual assault reform on college campuses. And Columbia was involved with that very actively. You may have heard of the Mattress Girl or Carry That Weight. That action happened at Columbia, and we've been involved in movements at different campuses around the country and around the world. So that sexual assault was a very, very controversial movement last year, and it still is this year, in that the entire university, the entire student body, or even the administrative body, didn't fully agree on the principles of the movement. Obviously, sexual assault reform was pretty much universally agreed upon, but the extent of that reform and who would be involved in what in various parts of the process of sexual assault adjudication and cases caused a lot of controversy, and a lot of students were turned off by some of the tactics that the movement used. So that is a huge struggle when it comes to more controversial movements, is to balance varied student opinions, especially on a very politically and socially active campus, which most college campuses are, is to understand that students have a variety of opinions on seemingly universal ideas. So the push for sexual assault would seem seemingly elusive, but there are surprisingly a lot of students who don't fully agree with the movement towards more support for sexual assault survivors, more resources for them. So it really is to understand and balance those interests, and also to find a way to uh, reach out to those individuals and have a conversation with them without being too confrontational. You know, they may not agree with you, um, but there's a way to come to the table and have those conversations and maybe change their minds.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Do you have any other things you'd like to add to that, Hanan, or other struggles that you might have found occurred while you were working on campus movements?
I totally agree with what Reese is saying. Feel like the very valid points. And we also have, the sexual assault movement on campus at Michigan as well. And it's a very, I think the most important thing is that, again, it's a very difficult conversation. So how do you create a space where a difficult conversation can be had, and where people, like I'm used to saying, even though have a varied amount of views and perspectives, how do you bring those people together and kind of dissolve some of that tension and most importantly find a solution for it, because that's the goal, right? And how do you get them on board? And I feel like I'm all about hugs and rainbows and love and stuff like that. So if there's a way to create a space for that, on campus, on a consistent basis where people can just come and ask questions, can come and debate and agree to disagree. If you have a space like that and you have these difficult conversations, they will be had, and some will be bad. But I think for the most part, we've had those conversations on campus with some social movements, and when you just have a conversation genuinely, it sometimes is the best way to go.
Right, that's great. I know, Ramis, you mentioned working with the administration and working with other campus leaders. I'm wondering if any of you guys can talk about experiences or tips for navigating the world of working with administration and faculty and other prominent leaders on campus. Ramis, you can go ahead again.
Sure. So it really, really depends on the school you go to and the level of administration you're working with. So there are a lot of small liberal arts colleges that focus entirely on undergraduate education, the administrative members of which focus entirely on students. And then there are big research universities like Columbia and like a lot of big private universities and even some state schools who have multiple layers of administration. You have a student-facing layer at the bottom, and then you keep going up and up. You reach the university president, his vice presidents, you reach the university trustees, and the higher up you get, the less student-facing they seem to be. So, for example, our university president, Lee C. Bollinger, he's a pretty renowned First Amendment scholar. He was actually the president at the University of Michigan before he was at Columbia. He is not on campus much, simply because he has to sell the brand of Columbia University across the world. So he's oftentimes in a different part of the world, creating a new Columbia Global Center or speaking on Columbia's place in academia today. And he doesn't interface with students too much. So it's a matter of identifying who is student-facing. It's a matter of talking to other student leaders and other people who have worked with administrators and find out who is willing to work with students and really going to advocate for them on an administrative level. And it's also trying to access those less accessible administrators. So it really is a push. Unfortunately, it has to be a push for some administrators. You can have articles in your local school newspaper, even like 100, 200 person actions just to get a meeting with our university president, which is ridiculous in my opinion. But it really, if you want to access the higher level of administration, you really have to go through all of these different tactics, whether that be writing an op-ed in your school newspaper, whether that be trying to find and identify a student leader who has a relationship with this administrator. It really is building a network and getting the word out that you want to speak with this administrator. And in the process, you can also share what you want to speak about. So, for example, last year there was a movement for Columbia to divest from private prison companies, and that was a very active movement. They actually protested in front of the building where our president teaches a class. So they protested as he was walking into his class, and they, at that moment, kind of got him to commit to meet with them. And that meeting eventually led to Columbia being the first university in the United States to divest from private prisons. So sometimes you have to resort to more active tactics, but honestly, the best bet is to really identify the student leaders who have relationships with administrators and really use them to connect with them.
Okay, thank you. Hanan, do you want to speak to this a little bit as well?
Yeah, just a couple of other points to mention. Understanding the mechanics of how your university runs is very important. That's what Ramiz was saying too. Like, it all depends on the university you go to, and just understanding how everything works, and who are the key point leaders, and knowing who on your team has access to them already. Like also Ramiz was saying, other student leaders. I'd say when you're building your allies, piggybacking on the point I mentioned before, some allies may have better connections than you do to administration, and so using them as a valuable resource is critical. And then also, I think connecting early on is very important. And so when the movement is still starting up, just connecting with administration early on, before the movement reaches its peak, is very important. So that then they are aware that you are there, and are aware of your movement and what your goals are. And so when the time comes when you're demanding certain things to happen, they're aware, they understand, and they've been notified early on. I've had very little experience in terms of working in administration, which is why I can't speak a lot about it, but I have been witness. I've been witness to several movements that have been taken to the regents and to the people in the higher ups, and things have been done about it, such as affirmative action and the divestment movement on the Michigan campus as well, and it works. And knowing when to resort to another strategy is very important too. That really is key, and it's very important that you know when the time is to do that. And that it depends on the movement, and it depends on the group.
I'm going to open this up to more general tips now, and what maybe I haven't touched on and what you'd like to touch on. And I'd also love when Hanan speaks to talk a little bit about more about her personal movements. I know we've heard about Rames's movements, but if you'd like to speak a little bit about what those look like and how you've structured those as well. So I'll open it up. Hanan, you can go ahead first if you want, unless you want to defer to Rames.
Forgot to unmute it. I'll my pleasure to take it on first. Some of the movements that I've been working on, they're not as controversial as others. Unfortunately, I love controversy, but mine are more centered on how do you, when you have a problem, how do you solve it via avenues such as social innovation and entrepreneurship and community organizing. And so I mentioned earlier that I've been working on a couple of apps, one on campus and one back home in Detroit. And the one on campus is centered on the lack of virtual communication when it comes to events and spreading events on campus and in the city of Ann Arbor. And so that's a huge issue. There's very little opportunity besides Facebook to communicate events and have an awareness campaign or a news feed of events that people can use to refer to. So basically, the app is in is in its prototype mode, and we should be launching in the next month or so. And that's something that it's not controversial, but it's very important to the needs of the campus and to other movements. So I feel like there's always a way through social innovation, especially with advanced technology, to solve issues that we have in our communities and in our spaces on campus and outside of campus. And then the other app I'm working on in Detroit is essentially a way where resources, events, and opportunities of learning can be incorporated into an app and served to the community. My community in Southwest Detroit is very diverse, but also very segregated geographically, and there aren't many opportunities to be connected to resources and events and to learn how to do things. And so my app, the app that we're working on, Synergize Southwest, would be essentially working towards that goal. There are lots of times where this is a controversial thing because social innovation is very different, and it's a very different avenue to take when you're battling issues, when you're battling something that's unjust or wrong. And so it's very new to me, and I'm still trying to take the reign on it. But it's very different, and I like that. I feel like it's a new challenge to underprivileged and disconnected communities, and it's an opportunity for people to connect. I'm all about connecting people, and I think that's basically my movement, and allowing even a virtual opportunity for the underprivileged to have access to the resources that they deserve and they need. And that's essentially what I'm doing. That's just a couple of things.
Okay. And do you have any general tips you want to give us, or we can jump over to Ramis and then come back to you for some general tips?
I'll hold off on that.
Okay. All right, Ramis, you can give us your general tips, talk a little bit more about what you do on campus. This is basically your free, open discussion, so go for it.
Let's see, general tips. I guess this isn't really a tip, but I guess in terms of guidance, you really should work from what you're passionate about. I know there's a strong push when you enter a college campus, or even when you're on a college campus, a strong push to get involved in the community, but make sure that the passion is there in the first place. So I'm involved a lot with our university's push to be a more diverse and inclusive community. And as a religious and racial minority, I haven't necessarily felt too excluded from my community. I felt very much a part of my community, but I have many friends who have felt excluded. And we wanted to make sure that those students felt as much a part of this community as every other student. So coming from a place of passion, of personal experience, myself and a couple other students created a commission on diversity, which is the first university-wide commission to deal with issues of diversity and equity for Columbia's minority communities. So we work from, like I said, a place of passion. This is something that we are personally implicated in. This is something that we personally want to see happen. And once you work from a place of passion, then the project is so much more genuine and so much more effective. So I know there are a lot of movements and initiatives and groups to be involved with on campus, but really take some time to understand your passion and to explore that passion through these initiatives and movements. And AID really did help me do that. It really helped me become more involved in international and domestic issues, and to really pinpoint and identify what makes me who I am in terms of the issues that I'm passionate about. So really take some time to identify your passions and just get more involved in those so that you can become even more passionate about them.
Thank you. Hanan, I think you're up for your tips.
Okay, sweet. So Ramis has been mentioning a very important point, which is like passions, finding your passions. And I think a lot of us, when we enter undergrad, or while we're on undergrad, we're so quick to get involved on organizations on campus that fulfill our passions. But my question is, how do you do that while you're studying for something that you like, or you're getting a career? So how do you incorporate that into your academics? And so that's a big question. So how do I do what I love outside of the work I do with student orgs, and inside what I do with my career, with what I study? And so I feel like there's always a way to incorporate that, whether you're an engineer, a pre-law student, a pre-med student. anything really. There's an opportunity to take what you learn in the classroom or what you learn outside of the classroom and bring it into the classroom and vice versa. And so finding that that drive to explore that area, I feel like it's very important. And another thing is undergrad is the perfect opportunity to do just that, to explore your passions, and you'll learn about that. Finding yourself and embarking on a road to self-discovery and things like that. And you will be on that road. It may take longer than undergrad, but that's the perfect opportunity.
I think she froze. Okay, well, we'll give it a minute for her to pop back in. Let's see.
Am I still alive?
Yeah, everyone else is still alive. While she's frozen, Marilyn, did you have any questions for them while you're here that maybe weren't answered?
I think you guys did a really good job of covering everything, so I don't have anything right now, but if I do come up with something in a second, I'll let you know.
Okay, well, it looks like Hanan's computer might have shut down. Okay, let's give it a couple seconds and see if she comes back. See, technology. But this is very cool technology that you can also use. And I'm curious about, Ramos, have you used new technology in your movements? Anytime. She talked a little about social media, but have you used any of these cool new gadgets when you're doing campus organizing?
So the thing, I guess the thing with social media and new technologies and new apps and everything nowadays is that there are so many, but the popular ones really seem to keep emerging on top. So Facebook, Twitter, even email is popular for organizing people. So we stick to the things that are popular, which is important. There are a lot of very effective, very innovative new apps out there, but in terms of reaching people and getting the word out about your movement, sticking to the ones that are popular is smart in terms of social media. So Facebook and Twitter are what we generally stick with, but for what you can do to be innovative there is to really think of new ways to engage with your audience. So, for example, a really good thing that comes to mind is there's a group on Columbia's campus called FLIP, which is the First Generation Low-Income Partnership. So it's a group of first-generation and low-income students that work towards, kind of saying that, yes, there are low-income students on campus, and we want to be a part of the community, and we want to make sure that the community accepts us as full-fledged members of our community. And what they have done on Facebook is they created a page called Class Confessions, which kind of allows you to submit anonymous anecdotes about your own experiences with class. So there are a lot of eye-opening, paragraph-long stories of how low-income students, first-generation students, have fared on this campus, and it really, really did open the eyes of a lot of administrators, a lot of student leaders, and a lot of changes have come out of that Class Confessions page. And that Class Confessions page, it made national headlines. Business Insider covered it. A lot of local New York news sites covered it. So really, the more innovative you get, the more effective it will be. And really think about what your audience is looking for. For a group of low-income students, their first step was to announce their existence to the rest of the community. Columbia is traditionally a more wealthy university, and a lot of its students come from wealth. So one of the first hurdles was to really carve that space on campus, to show that, yes, there's a group of students on campus that come from a low-income background, and yes, we are members of this community. So, and the Class Confessions page is a very, very effective way of getting that across. So it's just to utilize established social media platforms. Obviously, explore the new ones, explore ones that could potentially be more effective. I know a couple of movements have tried to use Yikyak, which is kind of like this local anonymous posting app just to get the word out. But really, they come back to Twitter and Facebook as the most effective, just because the majority of the college community uses those platforms. And if it's a matter of reaching out to people and building an audience, you want to go to where the audience already is.
Okay, thank you so much. Hanan's not going to get back on, but she said that her final tip is to be fearless in finding yourself and being different. So that's a great way to round up this call, and I'd like to thank you, Ramis, for being here and providing such great advice. Yeah, so I think we're done with this call, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for hosting.
Okay, thank you. Bye.